So this lesson right here is all about knowing your worth. And then let's add tax. Knowing your worth is so deep, it runs so deep. And I'm gonna give you, guys, I'm only here for a little while, so I'm gonna give you this real quick, so catch it. But knowing your worth has nothing to do with money. At first, I have so many friends. I'm gonna bring it back, and I wanna talk about the personal level of knowing your worth. I have a lot of girlfriends. I have a million sisters, it feels like. And I'm always seeing them in relationships or situations or with, husbands. And I'm always saying, dude, know your worth, know your value, know what you bring to him as a partner, as a mom, as a wife. So knowing your worth, it doesn't start on the job. If you're waiting to get to work to know your worth, you gotta go back. You have to go back farther. Knowing your worth starts at home. Knowing your worth starts with, even if you were programmed, even if it doesn't matter if you were in foster care, if you went through a bad childhood, if you were an only child or an orphan. We all have a childhood. We all are walking away from some sense of trauma in our childhood. However, it's what you choose to do in your teenage years to build yourself back up before you go into the world that is gonna start to reimagine how you see yourself. And so no one's gonna value you until you value yourself. That's just basic knowledge, basic science. Knowing your worth goes deep. And for me, it's so deep. It's deeper than money. It's not about contracts. It's not about a job. Knowing your worth goes back to the person. It doesn't matter how traumatic your childhood was. We all come away from obstacles. But knowing your worth starts with reimagining yourself and what you want for yourself. And it's a quiet journey. Knowing your worth is not loud. When we talk about valuing yourself, it's not something that's boastful. It's not something that's arrogant. That's the opposite of value. That's the opposite of worth. Knowing your worth starts at home. Before you can go to a job or a career or any kind of place where you're monetizing anything, you need to look at, how do I value myself at home? How do I make the friends around me value me? How am I valued within my community? How do I make my children honor themselves? Even if I wasn't honored, if I don't have the tools, or if I didn't have the distance to see that honoring in the household that I grew up in. So for me, knowing your worth it's an inside job that starts a long time ago. And then you build on that. So for me, I have so many friends, so many girlfriends and sisters around the world. And I look and I see them go through so much with their men or their husbands. And we're in a Playboy era, where women are not always respected the way they should be. But that respect starts with self. If you respect yourself, if you have a sense of self, and it doesn't matter, it's not about money, it's not about what you have. If you honor who you are and honor your body, honor your mind, your time, that's value. You're adding value to yourself. And so I know some people who are from the poorest countries who value themselves, who have pride and have dignity and hold their head up as kings and queens. And then I know people who are filthy rich, who have no sense, who know morals and no value. So that's not a monetary thing, it's an inside job. So before we get to that part, I just have to say, guys, again, and this is the parallel line I keep talking about, do the work. So valuing myself and having a sense of building myself up, it's a daily thing. It's something that drops in a bucket daily. I like myself. I look in the mirror and you know what? I like what I see. I like the stretch marks I have. I like the flaws that I have, the things that make me different. I like that my hips might be bigger than they were last year. I like that my hair isn't the hair that seems more manageable for campaigns and commercials or whatever that looks like. I lost all my hair in the 90s. Okay, for real, look at me. I lost my hair in the 90s, but I love it. I love being bald now. But taking something that is not necessarily seen as a win for someone else and making that a feather in your cap, a jewel in your crown. So worth has nothing to do with money. I'm gonna get to that, but it starts with a sense of self. And that's something we also need to, as Black people, as people of color, we need to teach our children. We need to make sure that we're pouring value into them. They see value in themselves when they look in themselves in the mirror. They see value in their stories and their identity. Value starts in the home, and it's a village, and we sometimes have been robbed of village. As I went to Africa, I've learned that, what was missing from the Black American experience is the fact that when I went to Africa, they have their own land, their name, their culture. But as a Black American, you're like the remnants of a natural disaster. What happens after a fire? All of these pieces you have to build yourself back up after that. So a lot of value and worth and self-worth and knowing your worth comes with reimagining what you want for yourself or your family or your legacy. So now let's go to the fun part. So seemingly money is an uncomfortable conversation, and we like to shy away from it, but let's jump right into it. So when I say know your worth, and then add tax. We'll get to the tax part later. But knowing your worth happens to do with a couple different things. I'll just put myself as a creative or someone who has an unorthodox career. So it's not a 9 to 5. I don't necessarily get paid a salary. Salary is a little different. But we're talking about these wilderness walkers, these people who are freelancers, these people whose money's come from different areas. We're creative. When I look at the value, where does it come from? It comes from how long have I been doing what I do? There's a formula to adding up to where we want to get to, which is the worth. How long have you been doing what you've been doing? If you came in the game 15 minutes ago, last year, and you're wanting the same rates that someone who's a seasoned vet has been getting, you have to quantify the why. So that why could be in the last year you've hit stardom and you've either sold 50 million copies of something or you've done something so revolutionary that everyone knows. But if not, it takes a little time to get to that pace. So what I'm saying is, how much skin do you have in the game? So skin in the game means years on the field. I was an assistant for 6, 7, 8 years. I've been doing makeup for 20 years. When I'm on set, someone's not paying me for the 8-hour day. They're paying me for 20 years of experience. After we're looking at how much skin do I have in the game, when I say skin, time. As we look at how precious time is so precious to all of us. As I look at how many years was I an assistant, how many years was I carrying someone else's luggage? I used to carry luggage for Pat McGrath. I used to carry luggage for Charlotte Tilbury. At some point when I was backstage at shows, I was only doing body lotion. But I wanted to be there, and I went, and it didn't matter if I was making $1 or $500. So with that same ethic, I go out, I leave the house with that same sense of work ethic. Doesn't matter how much I'm earning. And so that is also part of knowing your worth, knowing your value. Value or a quality product, as we look at the luxury market, is because a bag is stitched a certain way. It has a certain leather that is indestructible. What makes luxury, what makes a luxurious product or a product that's quality is something that cannot be broken easily. It's something that will last for a long time. It's something that's tried and true. And so how can you be a tried and true person in terms of a creative or a person who's working on set? Knowing that you're dependable. You don't flake easily. Do you call off a lot? Do you leave people hanging? So there's a curve that you have to think about. And if you're not thinking realistically, honestly, ask someone else. Ask other people who are working with you. And you'll know. You'll know because your reputation will start to wane if you're not quality. But I'm going to go back to the formula. So the formula is knowing how long I've spent the time what I'm doing, but also how much am I educating myself? How much knowledge do I have on the subject? I know people who are behind the lens who know more than the directors at times. People who are, interns and understudies are hired nowadays because they're more technologically savvy than the people who are running the show. So it's not about, where you are, how much knowledge do you have? So all that knowledge that you have, that aids in the value. You're indestructible. As I mentioned earlier, guys, I was an assistant. I made sure I was a destination as an assistant because I needed to intuit everything they needed before they needed it. There was no thing that she needed that I did not already have in my hand. And so that is value. When you're creating value for yourself as a partner, as a husband, as a wife, not so much as a parent. You always want your children to have value, I hope, I pray. But when you're creating value, it's knowing that I have something that is you can't easily walk away from. And it's not something that you need to boast, it's something that you need to do with your works. Let your work speak for you. Don't tell someone about your value. The value is seen, it's never heard. Okay, so now here we are. So we have time in the game, skin on the field, right? And then we have, the education portion of it all. So I've spent so many years doing this for free, possibly, as an understudy. I'm very well educated in the field. I know what I'm talking about when I speak of it. I've done research, I've read books, my knowledge is vast. Okay, and so now here we are, I'm on the job. I can only speak for myself now, guys. I know what I bring to the table. So knowing what you bring to the table isn't something that you need to push around and shrug around. It's not a fur boa. You don't wear it like a jacket. It's just something, it's a chip inside of your brain that realizes, it's an ultimate equalizer. So realizing when something is, worth or not worth your time. When we talk about worth, you don't always have to push up against, but just realize that, hey, this is not worth it for me. So don't fight anyone on what they have to offer, but just realize, this is for me or it's not. And so a lot of people get caught up in, you see my worth as a friend, see my worth as a boyfriend or a girlfriend, see my worth, so you can pay me this much or whatever that looks like. But that's not the goal. The goal is to know your worth. And if you really know your worth and you know the space you occupy, you'll either be present or your presence will be vacant. And so I want you guys to think about it like that. And there's less push and pull. There's not so much, emotion of revolving around the value that you bring to the table. And then look at the wins. How many wins have you had? How many times have you led your boss to victory? How many times have you led the team leader or whoever that may be, whether they be a director or a hairstylist, a journalist, whatever that looks like, to a win? How many times have you made your boss look really great to great men or great women or their audience and never tried to take the credit? So a lot of these things are into the curve of, that means that you're ready. When you get into that point where you're making your boss look really good or you're making the people above you shine, you're almost ready to jump out on your own. And so but that's value that you can quantify in a rate soon. So now I'm telling you guys this because I'm thinking about myself. Like I'm on set. I've done all this work for free for 2 decades. I used to work in a strip club, then going to Vogue in the morning. I know I had Beyonce in my camp. I know I had this or that, a contract here, a contract there. So now it's time to negotiate for myself. But first, I don't negotiate for myself. Never negotiate for yourself. Always get someone else to talk money for you. It's too emotional. And we always get caught up in the nuances of, well, do they not value me to pay me this extra $500? Do they not think that I'm worth it? So when I get to the job, I'm gonna have an attitude because of that $500 difference. But if someone's negotiating between you and whoever, the client or whatever, the commercial, whatever that looks like, you'll always just go and show up as talent, just like the talent that sits in our chair does. And you'll be able to do a really effective job. Knowing your worth also is just adding up all these things. It's a culmination of experience based on the wins, looking at the losses that were behind you, which you learned from the losses, and then how much do you want to add or say that that's worth? For me, I feel like it's worth a lot. So I feel like Linda Evangelista sometimes, where I don't want to get out of bed for less than $10,000. But what makes me be able to say that is because I've literally ran from evictions, ran from this, had to do this and slept slept in closets for the dream. But now I get to a place where it's not privilege, I worked to get here. No one gave me anything. So all I'm saying is when you're looking at value, when you're looking at worth, what do you bring to the table? What do you have that no one else can do? And how much, what's the going rate for that as well? So you have to understand that after you get to a certain point, listen, the most successful people always continue to push the finish line back. So for me, it's not about how much can I, gross or how much can I charge a client. It's not about that. But how can I make room for every other makeup artist, every other beauty professional, or all of these people who want to get into this business? I need to sit in places that even if they don't know I'm there, I'm making sure that account executives, that marketing directors, that advertising firms, publicists are paying Black and brown people the same thing, if not more, than their counterparts if they have the experience, if they have the knowledge. So I'm now at the lighthouse. I'm at a tower with a flashlight on brands and on companies and holding them accountable. And it's not because I think it's cool, it's because this is the work that I have to do. I've been allotted a space to run with the ball, and my people and so many different people have allowed me to run across the field with the ball. So now since I have that touchdown, what am I doing with the touchdown? And I think the goal of this whole program for me, the reason I even wanted to do this is how do you give back? And you give back by educating and arming a generation of people, whether they be older or younger than you, with the knowledge of we can all do this together, but it does take community. It does, I'll say it like this and I'll close on this one. Where would the medical community be if they didn't come back and share their findings? Where would modern medicine be if we didn't know that this drug didn't work when it was mixed with this drug? Or penicillin was an okay poison or okay toxin that, or amoxicillin or antibiotics. So when we look at modern medicine and how all of these doctors share their findings, that's what we need to do in our community. That sense of community just progresses this forward as a whole.